You're standing in a crowded room, surrounded by people you know, friends, colleagues, even strangers whose eyes seem to follow your every move. You speak, and the words feel heavier than they should. Your voice tightens as you catch someone's subtle smirk, or the way another person avoids eye contact just long enough to make you question whether you've said something wrong. You adjust mid-sentence, soften your tone, laugh at something you don't find funny. All of it happens without conscious thought. It's automatic, instinctive. But then, for just a moment, an impossible thought surfaces. What if I simply stopped caring? What if, in this exact instant, you let go of every expectation, every imagined judgment, every invisible rule dictating how you must behave, speak, or exist? What would happen if you allowed yourself to be entirely, unapologetically you? It sounds liberating, perhaps even exhilarating, but beneath that idea lurks a deeper, more unsettling truth. Because the moment you stop worrying about what others think, you begin to see how much of your life has been shaped by that concern. How many decisions have been made not out of desire, but fear. How many relationships have been maintained not because they fulfilled you, but because abandoning them felt like an admission of failure. How many dreams have withered under the weight of imagined disapproval? If you strip away all of that, if you remove the scaffolding of social approval, you're left with something raw, something terrifyingly real. And yet, is that not also where true freedom begins? This is the paradox. The very thing we spend our lives trying to avoid, judgment, rejection, isolation, is also the key to self-mastery. To live without fear of others' opinions is to step into a realm most never dare enter. It means rejecting conformity, resisting the urge to mold yourself into whatever shape will earn love, validation, or acceptance. It means confronting the possibility that, in doing so, you may lose people, that some will walk away, unable to understand why you no longer play by their rules, that others might call you selfish, arrogant, or cold. And yet, what if those labels were never yours to carry? What if they were merely projections, echoes of insecurity disguised as criticism? The tension builds when you realize that the alternative, continuing to care, comes at a cost far greater than discomfort. Every time you suppress a part of yourself to fit in, every time you silence your voice to avoid conflict, you erode something essential. You trade authenticity for comfort, certainty for control, and over time, the version of you that remains becomes a shadow, a carefully curated illusion designed to please rather than express. So the question lingers, pressing against the edges of your mind like a whisper in the dark. If you stopped caring what others thought, who would you become? And more importantly, would you still recognize yourself? You were never born needing validation. As an infant, you cried without shame, laughed without hesitation, and reached for the world with pure, unfiltered curiosity. Somewhere along the way, however, something changed. You learned that your existence was not neutral, that your actions carried weight beyond themselves, that your choices were judged, measured, and sometimes rejected. A parent's frown, a friend's whispered remark, a teacher's disapproving sigh, each became a lesson, a quiet reminder that survival required adaptation. And so, slowly, imperceptibly, you began to shape yourself around the expectations of others. Not because you wanted to, but because you had to. Because fitting in meant safety, and standing out often meant pain. This need to belong is deeply rooted in human psychology. Social psychologist Abraham Maslow placed belongingness in the center of his hierarchy of needs, not just above physiological survival, but below only safety itself. We are wired to seek connection, to crave acceptance, to fear exile. In ancient times, being cast from the tribe meant certain death. Today the stakes are different, but the instinct remains unchanged. Our brains still interpret rejection as a threat, triggering the same neural pathways activated by physical pain. Studies show that social exclusion lights up the anterior cingulate cortex, the same region responsible for processing physical suffering. Evolution has not caught up to modernity. Our bodies still react to emotional wounds as though they were mortal dangers. But beyond biology, there is philosophy. Thinkers from Aristotle to Nietzsche have grappled with the tension between individuality and conformity. Aristotle believed that man was, by nature, a political animal, his identity forged through participation in society. He argued that happiness could only be achieved within the framework of the polis, reinforcing the notion that fulfillment comes from alignment with collective values. Yet centuries later, Nietzsche challenged this view, warning of the dangers of herd mentality. He saw the masses as driven by resentment, a deep-seated resentment that led them to create moral systems that punished strength, independence, and originality. To Nietzsche, the highest form of existence was not found in obedience, but in self-creation, in the ability to transcend societal constraints and forge one's own path. Then there is Freud, who dissected the internal battle between desire and repression. He proposed that the psyche is divided into three parts: the id, the ego, and the superego. The id represents raw instinct, the primal drive for pleasure and immediate gratification. The superego, shaped by parental and societal influences, acts as the internalized moral compass, enforcing rules and restrictions. The ego mediates between these two forces, constantly negotiating between personal desires and external expectations. This internal conflict defines much of human struggle. The more rigid the superego, the stronger the internalized voice of authority, the more stifling the pressure to conform. Modern psychologists have built upon these ideas, refining our understanding of how identity is constructed. Carl Jung spoke of the persona, the mask individuals wear to meet societal demands. According to Jung, the persona is necessary for social functioning, but problems arise when a person identifies too closely with it, mistaking the mask for the true self. When this happens, the authentic inner life becomes suppressed, buried beneath layers of performance and pretense. Over time, the disconnect grows, leading to a sense of emptiness, a feeling that one is living someone else's life rather than their own. And so, the hidden problem reveals itself. The self you present to the world is not always the self you truly are. It is a construct, a product of years spent adapting to external pressures, learning which parts of you are acceptable and which must be hidden. This process is not inherently malicious. It is survival. But the danger lies in forgetting that the mask is only a mask, in believing that the approval of others is the measure of your worth. The deeper consequence is that, in seeking validation from the outside, you begin to lose touch with your inner compass. You start to rely on external affirmation to determine what is right, good, or meaningful, until the day comes when you no longer know what you want, only what you think you should want. And that is where the greatest tragedy unfolds. You wake up each morning tethered to a silent agreement, one you never signed but have lived by all the same. The world has conditioned you to believe that success is measured in likes, followers, promotions, and praise. But somewhere beneath the surface, a slow erosion takes place. You begin to confuse admiration with authenticity, mistaking applause for purpose. The more you chase approval, the more you lose sight of what truly moves you. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening. It creeps in like fog, subtle and insidious, until one day you look in the mirror and wonder why the reflection feels like a stranger. This is the power of cultural conditioning. It doesn't shout its commands. It whispers them through advertisements, school curriculums, workplace hierarchies, and family traditions. From childhood, you are taught to obey, to conform, to prioritize harmony over honesty. You learn that deviating from the norm invites discomfort, that questioning the status quo risks alienation. And so, you train yourself to perform, to smile when you feel nothing, to nod in agreement when you disagree, to pretend confidence when you are drowning in doubt. Each act of compliance chips away at your autonomy, until the line between who you are and who you are expected to be blurs beyond recognition. Neurologically, this pattern is reinforced by the brain's reward system. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and motivation, floods your system when you receive validation. Every compliment, every positive reaction, every social endorsement triggers a biochemical response that conditions you to repeat behaviors that lead to approval. This creates a feedback loop. The more you tailor yourself to fit others' expectations, the more rewarded you feel, and the harder it becomes to break free. It is not just a psychological habit, it is a neurological addiction. Cognitive biases further entrench this dependence. Confirmation bias leads you to seek out evidence that supports your belief that others' opinions matter, while ignoring contradictory information. The bandwagon effect compels you to align with popular sentiment, fearing the consequences of standing alone. And perhaps most insidiously, the spotlight effect convinces you that everyone is watching you, judging you, scrutinizing your every move. In reality, people are far too preoccupied with their own struggles to give you the attention you assume they do. But your brain does not distinguish between perception and reality. It reacts as if the entire world is waiting to pass judgment, keeping you locked in a state of perpetual self-monitoring. These forces conspire to keep you trapped in a cycle of self-negation. You bury your passions because they are impractical. You abandon your dreams because they are unconventional. You stay in relationships long past their expiration date because leaving feels like failure. And all the while, the gap between your public persona and private truth widens, creating an internal dissonance that manifests in anxiety, depression, and a gnawing sense of meaninglessness. Worse still, the consequences extend beyond the individual. Societies built on the foundation of conformity breed stagnation. Innovation is stifled when deviation is punished. Progress stalls when people are too afraid to challenge prevailing narratives. History is filled with examples of those who dared to defy the consensus: Galileo, Socrates, Rosa Parks, only to face ridicule, persecution, or exile before their ideas reshaped the world. The irony is that the very force that binds us together, our need for belonging, is also what holds us back from becoming more than we are. So here you stand, caught in the gravitational pull of a system that thrives on your compliance. The realization settles in. If you continue down this path, you will reach the end of your life, having lived according to someone else's script. And the question returns, louder now, demanding an answer. How much longer will you allow the opinions of others to dictate the course of your existence? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the prison you've been locked inside was never built by anyone else. It was constructed brick by your own hands. Every compromise, every self-edit, every silent surrender to the expectations of others was a choice, even if it didn't feel like one at the time. The revelation is both horrifying and electrifying. You have the key. You always have. The bars that seemed so impenetrable were illusions, sustained only by the belief that they were real. And now, for the first time, you understand that breaking free is not about rebellion or defiance. It is about reclaiming sovereignty over your own mind. This is the radical shift in perspective. What others think of you is not your responsibility. It is not your duty to manage their emotions, to validate their beliefs, or to live in a way that makes them comfortable. Their judgments, their criticisms, their expectations, they are theirs, not yours. They reflect their own fears, their own limitations, their own unresolved conflicts. And once you stop seeing their opinions as directives, once you stop allowing their voices to dictate your choices, something profound begins to happen. You start to hear yourself again. Not the version of you that pleases, performs, or apologizes, but the version that speaks in whispers when the world is quiet. This is not an easy transformation. It requires a dismantling of everything you have been taught to value. Society rewards conformity, celebrates obedience, and punishes deviation. But history's most extraordinary minds understood this truth early on. Michelangelo sculpted David not because he sought approval, but because he saw something no one else did and refused to let it remain trapped in stone. Virginia Woolf wrote her revolutionary stream of consciousness novels despite critics who dismissed her work as too introspective. Nikola Tesla pursued discoveries that defied conventional wisdom, even when the scientific community ridiculed him. These figures did not achieve greatness because they followed the crowd. They achieved it because they rejected the tyranny of expectation and embraced the chaos of their own vision. Breaking free does not mean becoming indifferent to all external input. There is wisdom in discernment. Feedback, when given with integrity, can be invaluable, but the crucial distinction lies in ownership. When you stop treating others' opinions as verdicts and instead treat them as data, you regain agency. You decide what serves you, what challenges you, what inspires growth, and what is simply noise masquerading as truth. You begin to filter through the static, recognizing that not all criticism is constructive, not all praise is genuine, and not all expectations deserve obedience. A powerful exercise in this journey is the practice of radical honesty, not just with others, but with yourself. Ask the difficult questions. Why do I do what I do? Why do I say what I say? Am I acting out of desire or fear? Is this my voice, or am I echoing someone else's? These inquiries are not meant to punish or judge, but to illuminate. They shine a light on the hidden corners of your mind, where self-doubt festers, where false beliefs take root. And in that illumination, something shifts. You begin to see the patterns, the habits, the unconscious scripts that have dictated your behavior for so long. And with awareness comes the power to rewrite them. Another vital step is embracing discomfort. Freedom does not arrive wrapped in comfort. Letting go of the need for approval means stepping into uncertainty, facing the void of not knowing whether people will still like you, respect you, or accept you. But here is the secret they never tell you. The people who matter will stay. Those who genuinely care about you will not vanish when you stop contorting yourself to fit their image of who you should be. And those who do leave? They were never invested in your truth anyway. True connection is not built on performance. It is built on mutual respect, authenticity, and the courage to be seen exactly as you are. As you progress on this path, you begin to notice a shift in your energy. You no longer waste hours agonizing over hypothetical judgments. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head, obsessing over whether you said the right thing. You release the exhausting burden of trying to be liked by everyone, realizing that universal approval is not only impossible, it is unnecessary. Instead, you cultivate presence. You engage with the world not as a performer, but as a participant. You speak because you have something to say, not because you are afraid of silence. You act because it aligns with your values, not because you are desperate to prove your worth. And in this newfound clarity, you discover something unexpected. The more you stop caring what others think, the more power you gain. Not over them, but over yourself. You reclaim your time, your thoughts, your choices. You stop waiting for permission to be who you are. You stop seeking validation from sources that were never meant to define you. And in that space of self-possession, you finally begin to breathe. At the core of it all, there is a singular, undeniable truth. You are not here to fulfill the expectations of others. No one is. Every soul that walks this earth carries a unique constellation of desires, instincts, and contradictions. And yet, for centuries, humanity has operated under the illusion that conformity is the price of belonging, that to be loved, accepted, or respected, we must shrink, bend, and mold ourselves into shapes that satisfy the gaze of the world. But what if that belief is the ultimate lie? What if the greatest betrayal is not to others, but to yourself? Consider this. The opinions of others hold no intrinsic power unless you grant them authority. A critic's words cannot wound unless you believe them. A stranger's glance cannot define you unless you allow it. Even the loudest voices in your life, those of parents, mentors, lovers, or peers, carry influence only insofar as you choose to listen. Their judgments are fragments of their own internal landscapes, reflections of their fears, insecurities, and unmet needs. And yet, for too long, you have treated them as gospel, as if their perspectives held more weight than your own. Herein lies the final realization. You are the author of your reality. Not the world, not fate, not circumstance, not even the people closest to you. You are the one who decides what matters, what deserves your energy, what truths you will uphold. And the moment you grasp this, something fundamental shifts. You stop seeking permission. You stop waiting for validation. You stop measuring your worth against external standards. You begin to see that the pursuit of approval was never about love. It was about control. Control over how others perceive you. Control over the narrative of your life. Control over the illusion that if you just get it right, everything will fall into place. But life is not a formula. It is not a checklist of achievements, a sequence of well-received performances, a collection of accolades. It is raw, unpredictable, and deeply personal. And the only way to live it fully is to stop outsourcing your sense of meaning to the world around you. Stop looking to others to tell you who you should be. Stop shaping your life around the echo of someone else's expectations. Because the moment you do, you awaken to something far more potent than approval. You awaken to agency. With this awareness comes a profound liberation. You no longer need to convince the world of your value. You no longer need to twist yourself into knots trying to be liked, admired, or understood. You no longer need to apologize for taking up space. You simply are, and that is enough, more than enough. Because when you stop caring what others think, you stop giving away pieces of yourself to fill the voids of those who never asked you to. You stop sacrificing your truth on the altar of consensus. You stop waiting for permission to be who you already are. This is not arrogance. It is not indifference. It is sovereignty. It is the quiet, unwavering knowledge that your existence does not require justification. That your voice matters, not because the world agrees, but because it is yours. That your choices, your passions, your deepest convictions are valid, not because they conform to some external standard, but because they are yours. And in that recognition, you reclaim something that was never meant to be lost, your power. Now ask yourself, how much of your life have you spent performing instead of living? How many moments have slipped through your fingers because you were too busy trying to be what others wanted you to be? How many dreams have remained dormant because you feared judgment? How many versions of yourself have you buried beneath the weight of expectation? And most importantly, how much more could you become if you finally let go? Because the truth is, the world does not need another imitation. It does not need another person pretending to be something they are not, chasing after borrowed dreams, speaking in voices that are not their own. What the world needs, what it has always needed, are those who dare to be real. Those who refuse to dim their light to make others comfortable. Those who live not for approval but for purpose. Those who understand that true impact does not come from conformity, but from courage. So now the choice is yours. You can continue walking the well-worn path, following the script written by unseen hands, playing the role assigned to you by forces that do not know your name. Or you can step off the stage, lower the curtain, and begin writing your own story. One that is not dictated by fear, but fueled by truth. One that is not shaped by others, but defined by you. And when you do, you will find that the world does not collapse. People do not vanish. Life does not unravel. Instead, something remarkable happens. You begin to live, not in fragments, not in shadows, but fully. You begin to breathe, to create, to love, to dream. To exist, not as a reflection of others, but as the architect of your own destiny. Because in the end, the only opinion that truly matters is yours.